Let me start by saying I like Jordan Peterson. He is a great philosopher who has shared lots of marvelous insight and reached out to help millions of people through his books and ideas. However, one thing I disagree with him on is the character of Superman. So, with all due respect, I wanted to discuss Superman in response to some rather basic criticism that Peterson has made towards the character, and I also want to reframe the Superman story in a way that fits into Peterson's ideas. So here's the recent interview that got me thinking about this. It's actually a pretty good interview in its entirety. I'll link it down below. But this one part really got me thinking back to Superman.
We probably relate to the villain, if it's a sophisticated villain, way more than the hero, because the hero isn't really dynamic. He's not really battling a lot. In a lot of these like superhero movies, like Superman, what the fuck does he have to deal with? The fact that he's faking to have powers?
Well, it's a big problem with Superman, right? I mean, he got to the point where because he could do everything, there was nothing to do.
Yeah.
There's no story.
Boring. Give me a regular guy that's going through some shit.
I wanted to be fair to Peterson, so I looked for other instances where he mentioned Superman, but I found that his stance on Superman's near omnipotence was pretty consistent. So he also made this point here in this 2017 lecture. I believe it's in Toronto.
You know, one of the things that happened to Superman in the 1980s, Superman started out, he's got a heavenly set of parents, by the way, and an earthly set of parents, and he's an orphan like Harry Potter. Very common theme is that when Superman first emerged, he could only jump over buildings, you know, and maybe he could stop a locomotive, but by the time the 1980s rolled around, like he could juggle planets and, you know, swallow hydrogen bombs and, you know, he could do anything. Well, people stopped buying the Superman comics because how interesting is that? It's like something horrible happens and Superman deals with it. And something else horrible happens and Superman deals with it. And it's like, that's dull.
And to top all that off, he said this also in his hit book, 12 Rules for Life, which I did read a few years ago and I loved it, but I guess I missed this mention of Superman. Peterson writes, "No limitation, no story, no being. A realization of this sort emerged more recently in the pop culture world during the evolution of the DC Comics cultural icon Superman. Superman was created in 1938 by Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster. In the beginning, he could move cars, trains, and even ships. He could run faster than a locomotive. He could leap over tall buildings in a single bound. As he developed over the next 4 decades, however, Superman's power began to expand. By the late 60s, he could fly faster than light. He had super hearing and X-ray vision. He could blast heat rays from his eyes. He could freeze objects and generate hurricanes with his breath. He could move entire planets. Nuclear blast didn't faze him. And if he did get hurt somehow, he would immediately heal. Superman became invulnerable. Then a strange thing happened. He got boring. The more amazing his abilities became, the harder it was to think up interesting things for him to do. Oh, Jesus. He developed powers so extreme that he could deus himself out of anything at any time. He gained some reasonable limitations. A superhero who can do anything turns out to be no hero at all. He's nothing specific, so he's nothing. Oh, come on, man. He has nothing to strive against, so he can't be admirable. Being of any reasonable sort appears to require limitation. Perhaps this is because being requires becoming, perhaps as well as mere static existence. And to become is to become something more, or at least something different. That is only possible for something limited." Okay, so clearly Peterson has stuck to this point on Superman for a while, and he's not the only one. Superman has been criticized this way by many people for a while now. You hear the same thing over and over again. He's too overpowered, he's too bland or uninteresting, he's too perfect in character, nothing can challenge him, etc., etc. But while many writers have struggled to write good Superman stories over the years, I think it is unfair to broadly dismiss decades of Superman lore because of one over-repeated argument on his power level and his Boy Scout-like nature. Again, I like Jordan Peterson, but if I had to guess, his background as a clinician and professor did not leave much free time to peruse Superman comics, which is fine, but I still have to disagree with him and other Superman critics on this. In reality, Clark Kent is one of the most dynamic and interesting characters I have ever encountered in any medium. His heritage from a doomed planet and his second chance on an adopted planet is just as interesting now as it was when introduced nearly a century ago. His incredible power is not boring or lazy. It's an invitation for talented writers to bring forth new and engaging challenges that a god living amongst men would have to endure. Storytellers have presented brilliant limitations and challenges to the character over the years, and it's a shame that most people haven't noticed them. What these critics don't seem to get is that writers scale up the threats Superman needs to face. Superman doesn't just use brute force to destroy the villain and save the day every time. That's just not what happens. He's often a representation of optimism facing off against symbols of pessimism and nihilism. There's so much more to this mythos than what's on the surface. Superman is nearly a god among mortals, but the fascination with the character lies in what he chooses to do with these abilities. Superman could colonize the planet if he wanted to, have all the riches in the world, do whatever he wanted, or he could enforce his good intentions on people by brute force as a dictator, but he doesn't do that. Instead, he chooses to help people and make his ideas of hope and optimism available to people rather than to ram it down their throats. He has these strong and unyielding morals instilled in him by Jonathan and Martha Kent. He's always trying to live up to those morals no matter what. To simply write Superman off as a boring Gary Stu is just not a fair point in my opinion. He is an alien, yes, but his upbringing makes it so that he loves his adopted planet and wants nothing more than to bring out the good in it. In response to the host's question,
Superman, what the fuck does he have to deal with?
I think he'd be surprised. This guy's name is Andrew Schultz, by the way. I think he'd be surprised to see what Superman has to deal with in some of his best stories. Superman deals with things similar to all of our struggles, but on a bigger scale. So, in a way, writers can magnify these conflicts and present them in a new and interesting light that engages the reader further than just laying them out blatantly in everyman protagonist's everyday life. And here are some of my favorite examples of that. One of the biggest examples, of course, is Clark Kent's foster father. And losing Jonathan Kent, who's the biggest influence in Clark's life, is a pretty big struggle, as losing a parent or a loved one would be to anybody. And Superman's not a necromancer. He has to just deal with that. And even though he's a god and he has these great abilities, he has these feelings of regret and inability to save the people he loves when he does lose them. And another story that further explores this point is Kingdom Come, which is a classic. It's an amazing comic. Go check it out. And Clark grapples with the passing of Lois Lane and the destruction of all of Kansas, not even Krypton at that point. We're getting into his humanity here. Superman can do all these amazing feats, but he's not a necromancer, once again, and he can't rebuild his home of Kansas or anything like that. And he has to stand up for his ideology of hope once again in this story, and he has to fight other superheroes. So his power level doesn't just get him what he wants immediately in this story. And Kingdom Come overall is just an amazing story that utilizes Superman's character in amazing ways. Another example you can check out is Superman for All Seasons, and this is focused on Clark Kent and his role in Metropolis, contrasted with his upbringing in Smallville. It's a very nostalgic, beautiful tale that examines Clark as a human as much as it examines his heroship. And yes, heroship is a real word. I looked it up. This leads into another point. Superman is more human than you realize. He was raised by farmers in Kansas from nearly the moment he was born. He works a 9-to-5 job. He struggles with romances and family issues. Shit, he's probably more human than I am. And Superman for All Seasons illustrates that. But to go further, you can check out The Death of Superman, which, as the title suggests, Superman actually dies. But not by kryptonite or another plot device, as people would call it, but he's simply killed by a stronger villain, and his death is a huge deal in the universe, as the comic was a huge deal in our world when it first released. And this story does a great job of challenging the notion of Superman as an unbeatable Gary Stu. And again, it shows writers creatively scaling up threats that challenge Superman. So these are some good story examples of why Superman is a lot more interesting than his critics think. His animated shows have also done well with the character, and it's too bad that the major films have not quite lived up to Superman's potential. I think the Snyder Cut had some pretty good Superman moments, but I'll talk about that in another video for another time. But of all the comics, films, and shows, I think there is one Superman story that tops them all. The best in my eyes. The big Mac Daddy of the Superman Chronicles. It's not just my favorite Superman comic, and I'm not kidding here. It is one of my favorite works of fiction of all time. It's amazing. Say it with me now. All-Star Superman. This is the one I would recommend to Jordan Peterson and the guy in the Hawaiian shirt, Andrew Schultz, to read. In fact, I recommend this to anyone who is literate. And if you are illiterate, learn to read and then pick up this book first. Believe me, the Bible and To Kill a Mockingbird can wait. Just get this one. Grant Morrison, one of the best writers in comics, crafts the story of Superman terminally ill from overexposure to solar radiation. That alone is brilliant, since the sun is his power source. I just love that. Close to the end, Clark has to look at his life and reaffirm what truly matters to him. I won't go into detail because it's so great and you should really read it for yourself, and you won't be disappointed, trust me. We see Superman at perhaps his most human, in his most quintessential and vulnerable forms. It's not about his strength and insane power to fight off any foe. It's about Clark Kent, the Superman, a symbol of hope and optimism, truth, justice, and the American way. I recommend this to anyone, once again, to repeat myself, if they have mixed feelings on Superman. And I would love to hear Jordan Peterson's thoughts on this story one day, so we can put this, let's face it, trite and tired belief on Superman to rest. It's weird that a guy as sophisticated and smart and intelligent as Jordan Peterson has a pretty bland, boring take on Superman, and it really caught me off guard. So, I mean, I think he would benefit a lot from reading a great Superman story like All-Star Superman. To go a little bit further, it's not just that I disagree with Jordan Peterson on Superman. I think Superman and his lore is actually another perfect example that Jordan Peterson can incorporate into his philosophies. I came across this video of Thorin, an esports journalist, who illustrated this point well, and it's something I hadn't thought of before. Peterson reflects a lot on Joseph Campbell, the hero's journey, and myths in our society. He mentioned the Marvel superheroes as an example a lot, but he keeps giving the same answer on Superman. Thorin explains that Superman is a larger-than-life figure. His lore and mythos was established over decades by many people, and his influence was present before us and will continue to endure with our descendants. And that way, he is more real than any of us, and his status as one of the best-known heroes cements his legacy for the future. I'll link that video to Thorin explaining all that below. So overall, I just felt the need to make this, not because of Jordan Peterson in particular, but mostly because of this dismissal of the character being more frequent than ever. With the Marvel Universe expanding in popularity, DC's Golden Age icon is left with a few adaptations with mixed reception. It's too bad that the mainstream will only watch a movie and eschew the comics, but because of that, I think it's more important than ever to understand the original superhero himself. Superman is a symbol of American ideals. His story should be considered among some of the best in Western canon. Yes, I'm not exaggerating. He is anything but a boring omnipotence. He is a dynamic human character that has been established over decades by many people, and over the coming decades, he will remain that human symbol to strive towards. Thanks for watching, and just to repeat myself, I love Jordan Peterson and his work, but he came after my boy Clark Kent, and I can't let that shit slide. So, I really think the host, Andrew Schultz on Flagrant 2, really got me with just the way he dismissed Superman, like somehow Superman was beneath him. So I wanted to just put my thoughts out on why I love Superman and why critics of Superman should give him another chance. So, thanks again. Please like and subscribe. Until next time, I'm signing off.